Your summer starts now with Memorial Day deals at the Home Depot. It's time to fire up summer cookouts with the Next Grill 4-burner gas grill on special buy for only $199. And entertain all season with the Hampton Bay West Grove 7-piece outdoor dining set for only $499. This Memorial Day, get low prices guaranteed at the Home Depot. While supplies last, price and valid May 14th through May 27th. U.S. only, exclusions apply. See homedepot.com/price match for details.
You said this place was steps from the water.
We just haven't found the steps yet.
How much did we save?
Enough.
Enough to get lost?
Or you could book a stay with Hilton.
Welcome to your oceanfront room, just steps from the water.
The Hilton sale is on now. Book on Hilton.com or the Hilton app and save up to 20% to get the stay you expected. When you want savings, not surprises, it matters where you stay. Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome back to Marvelous Disney, the show where we talk Marvel, Disney, theme parks, fandom, movies, comics, streaming, and apparently now theatrical event films that feature very small green children. I am entertainment writer Jim Hill, and joining me as always is Dan Graney. Dan, I have to ask, because this is a genuinely historic week for Star Wars, did you make it out to the Mandalorian and Grogu?
Yes, Jim. I did not just see it, though. I assembled a task force, and we're talking my kids, my parents, my sister, her husband, my niece, and nephew, the whole family unit, minus Paula, who's, in Portugal. Multiple generations in one theater watching the same Star Wars movie together for the first time. And gosh, I have to be honest, I don't know how long, but I'll tell you, there's something about watching a kid who grew up on the original trilogy sitting next to kids who grew up on The Mandalorian, and we're all, reacting to the same screen at the same moment. And that's kind of, what this whole franchise is supposed to do.
That is true. Now, that multi-generational quality, that's kind of hard to manufacture. So either story earns that or it doesn't. And the fact that Grogu, a character that didn't exist till 2019, can anchor that kind of a moment, says something about what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni actually built with that show, The Mandalorian. So, gotta ask, how did the family receive it? Was there a particular moment in the movie that, where everyone kind of locked in together?
I will say is a strong opening. We all said pretty much the same thing, is that it's fun. And we all, even, my daughter, my son said it was good. But my daughter said, well, it was like the show. And it's the show, but bigger. It's what season 4 would have been, maybe, had it not been for the writers and actor strikes. Quite possibly that might be the case. Does it feel like episodes of the show? Undeniably. The opening scene, though, does show, it gives you a sense that it's so much bigger and there's more action and there's more characters on screen and bigger set pieces and actual physical sets. And, I would almost say that I would argue that it should feel like the show or the formula of the show. But I will say, if for anybody out there, if you don't like the show or you haven't watched it, it may not be your cup of blue milk. But I don't know, I had to. But what about you, Jim? Did you get to see it?
Yeah, and I have to say that your comment about the show only bigger from the opening action scene, which, by the way, I mean, you gotta love. The story about when George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are on the beach in Hawaii and talking about what they want to make is a Bond movie, but no one will let them make a Bond movie, so they come up with Indiana Jones. And so to have the opening of The Mandalorian and Grogu effectively have the Bond action sequence, just that, that big, that scale, as if to tell you, this is not the TV show, but at the same time, it leans into the strength of the TV show. In fact, it was a lot of the little character moments, or for that matter, the fact that he got the Razor Crest back, or a new Razor Crest. I mean, if you were a fan of the old show, you like that, but at the same time, there were still surprises. I mean, what was your take on the whole arc with Rhoda?
So the funny thing with Rhoda is that I've heard so many mixed things about it. Some people are like, some people question the actual design of the character. Some people question the voice of the character, both of which I actually enjoyed. For me, just the idea that they took a character that is one of the first characters in the Filoni Lucas Clone Wars universe, because those initial few episodes, which became the theatrical animated Clone Wars movie, included the character Rhoda. He was Stinky is what they called him. But that's a character that goes back to the first appearance of Ahsoka and Anakin and rescuing that character. I thought it was a great way to bring back an old character, and in a way that ties to the lore with the Hutts.
Yeah, and now mind you, again, we get to see. What is it? Jabba's. These are his nephew and niece. The
twins.
And we saw them.
Yeah,
the twins. Yes, and we'd previously met them on the Book of Boba Fett, and I guess that's the other thing. I think there was kind of a delicate balancing act with The Mandalorian and Grogu, in that if you had watched the show, there were certain things you picked up on. But at the same time, you could go walk into this cold. You could enjoy it for what it was. So, all in all, again, a good, solid, entertaining Star Wars movie. Yeah. If you were to, face it, the original Star Wars back in '77. A lot of folks talk about how, so much of the storytelling and the structure from that came from the Hidden Fortress, that classic Japanese film.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas if you were to talk about this one, what genre would you place Mandalorian and Grogu in?
Especially that opening sequence, I went straight to Bond. I was like, wow, they're doing the Bond thing right off the bat, where you're sort of like at the climax of another movie, to just immediately jar you and bring you in. But then parts of it kind of felt like, things like, Guns of Navarone or Force 10 from Navarone. I mean, it was like an action war epic, with a little bit of mystery thrown in there. I mean, they were definitely pulling from genres, whereas initially, when we first were introduced to the character of Mandalorian, it was pure, Sergio Leone.
There we go, Western. And what was kind of interesting about the show early on is that, each of the episodes, there was a cumulative story that they were telling, but at the same time, they were standalone adventures. And so, how did you feel about this? Did you feel like this was the TV show writ large, or was this a movie?
Yeah, it feels like the TV show, and I had heard mixed on this. Some people were like, "Oh, it's just a few episodes stitched together," and I heard I actually watched something last night, a breakdown that pretty successfully made the case that this is 6 episodes, each one being 6 two-part episodes, and describing the beats of where this one with the cliffhanger, and it was really pretty compelling. happening. And I've been watching interviews with Jon Favreau, and he talked about, when they, this as season 4 was written. He said that. He said it was done. They were ready. But then, with all the strikes happening, and then when they came back, they're like, well, we should just do a movie. Now, he didn't say, oh, so I just took the scripts and made him a movie. But there's definitely some beats where, there's three, almost like three mini movies in this. We've got our initial, setup, then we've got the middle section, and then we've got the whole end action set piece. So it does feel like the show. And I would say that, it should feel like the show. If it didn't feel like the show, people would be like, well, that's weird. But so I think that's being held as a criticism to accommodate for that. I think that's where they went with the bigness, where they said, they want to take more time, and they went with practical characters, and they went with stop motion. That they brought Phil Tippett in, it's just, so it's a lot of that stuff where the love letter to the making is maybe not, it's probably lost on a larger audience, but, knowing that, it's like, it makes you appreciate it more.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Again, I had an enjoyable time. And also, do we want to talk now about what happened with the box office for this? Because face it.
Let's come back to that. Let's come back to that, because there's some other stuff that happened that is sort of like piggybacks with that, and it's stuff that happened. Oh, I don't know, maybe at the parks.
Okay, all right. And speaking of the parks, if you are planning on heading down to Central Florida to check out Universal Orlando Resort or the Walt Disney World Resort, you should check out unlockmagic.com, where you can get real discounts on Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando tickets, sometimes up to 12% off. Unlock Magic is run by the exact same team behind the DVC rental store and the DVC resale market. And so what you want to do, just pick your dates, grab your tickets, and go. And when you do, tell the nice folks at unlockmagic.com that it was Dan and it was Jim that sent you. So now, before we continue to plug on with the show, we have a little bit of listener mail.
Yes. Before we dive into the news, I do want to acknowledge this question that came in from a listener, Chris D. I didn't want to use his last name because I also don't want to butcher it. And Chris, this was a great question. And Jim, I really wanted this one for you, because Chris asked, he wanted to know, how Burger King had revealed, and it's out there now, the Mandalorian and Grogu meal. And he said, I always thought McDonald's had the rights to all the Disney characters, so how is Burger King doing a Grogu-themed promotion, and did something change?
Okay, Chris, this brings up an interesting moment in Disney history. Again, this used to be common knowledge, but I think a lot of people have forgotten that back in 1997, the Disney Company and the McDonald's Corporation signed this epic 10-year deal. Again, it ran from 1997 through 2006. And in fact, it was on the back of this, Dan, that, McDonald's wound up as the sponsor of all of Dino Land USA, the Countdown to Extinction ride, and then the Restaurantosaurus there and all that. But McDonald's pays over $100 million for the rights to Disney movies, characters, TV shows, and again, even the theme parks, for Happy Meal toy creation. And it was a massive deal powered by a lot of hit films during this period. Mulan, The Incredibles, Finding Nemo, and all of them, little toys in Happy Meal boxes being sold to parents in minivans, handed out through the drive-up window. In fact, by the way, Jim Schul was Disney's representative to McDonald's during this period, and actually went out to Hamburger University. Has all these amazing stories about going to, McDonald's corporate headquarters. And he talked about during this time, 60% of the business that was done at McDonald's was through that drive-through window, and the whole notion of it was the child in the back seat that was making the call about where are we eating tonight, and it's like, I want to go to McDonald's, I want the toy. Yeah. But anyway, that's what it was, that exclusivity.
So, but wasn't that exclusivity, so tight that this is what locked Star Wars out of McDonald's? Because, at that point, Lucasfilm wasn't part of Disney yet. So, the irony is that McDonald's had Disney, but they couldn't touch Star Wars.
Yeah, but again, this deal ends in 2006. Disney didn't renew it, and to be honest, there were business reasons on both sides. And also, just to be clear here, this was when America was getting kind of phobic about fast food, and Disney wanted to sort of put some distance between themselves and what was being talked about for childhood nutrition at the time. So, and the parks, which, remember, once upon a time you could go into a Disney park and get McDonald's French fries and chicken McNuggets.
The fry wagon.
I want to say
the French fry wagon.
There we go. All right. Yeah, they phased that out. So Disney now goes non-exclusive, which means they can work with whoever they want, whoever makes sense at that point for a given project. And Burger King stepped in during this transition and did some Disney-related promotions. But then, starting in 2018, McDonald's and Disney partner again, but non-exclusively this time around. So McDonald's gets some Disney Happy Meal toys, but Disney is also in a position going forward to make other arrangements with other fast food chains.
All right. Well, so, Chris, the short answer is McDonald's hasn't had exclusive Disney rights since 2006, and Disney, to your point, Jim, is picking its fast food partners project by project. So Mando and Grogu went with Burger King, where you could get your barbecue bounty Whopper and a bounty hunter helmet carton, that Grogu's blue cookie shake, which I have to say, every time I see it, I'm like, I gotta maybe get there and try that. Grogu's garlic chicken fries. Some of this stuff is like, okay, I guess you could call it, you could theme it Mandalorian. The blue shake, I want to give it a plus on that.
Okay. Now, interestingly enough, Disney's VP of Partnerships, and by the way, that's a real job at the Mouse House, said in the press release that out ahead of the Mandalorian and Grogu promotion was that it was Burger King's have it your way spirit that fit the Mandalorian vibe, because it's about bringing people together through shared experiences. And it's like, wow, that's really overthinking the burger thing, but that's okay.
Yeah. That's some committed corporate synergy. It is kind of funny because I don't know that Burger King is even using that anymore, but hey, he gave it a shot. It was a great question, Chris, though. We appreciate that.
Thanks for reaching out. Okay, and given that the name of this podcast is actually the Marvelous Disney podcast, we should also acknowledge that it's not just Star Wars that's having quite a week right now. It's Marvel had a kind of an interesting organizational announcement. And Dan, was this on your radar?
I caught this, and Jim, I really wanted to get your head on this because you've watched this company through a lot of transitions. But here's what happened. Brad Winderbaum, who we've talked about a lot on this show, he's been promoted to the head of Marvel Television Animation, Comics, and Franchise. And then Dan Buckley, who's been running the comics and franchise side for about 30 years, is stepping down. Now, that seems like a pretty big deal. What do you make of that?
Well, look, the name Dan Buckley may not mean a lot to casual Marvel fans, but inside the industry, this is genuinely significant. I mean, Buckley is the guy who shepherded Marvel Comics for 3 decades, and Civil War, Secret War, the Age of Krakoa, I mean, all of that happened under his watch. And when Feige talks about the comics as the research and development arm for the MCU, it's Buckley. It's a huge reason that pipeline functioned the way that it did. Now, Winterbaum, on the other hand, he has been with Marvel since Iron Man, the first film, 2008, and built his career entirely on the adaptation side. Now, he rose through production on feature films, then shifted over to TV, where he basically oversaw the entire Disney Plus era. We're talking Hawkeye, Loki, Agatha All Along, Daredevil Born Again, X-Men 97. So he's an MCU guy through and through. And now that sensibility will be running through comics as well.
So, and that's kind of, that seems like a little bit of a tell, because the person now overseeing Marvel Comics is someone whose entire career has been built on adapting those comics, not publishing them. So it seems, it almost feels like a meaningful shift in philosophy. And I want to be fair here. It's not necessarily a bad one. The stuff Winterbaum has overseen on the TV side has been some of the best Marvel content in years.
Oh, absolutely. And there is a version of this where the comics and the screen side finally start pulling in the same direction in a way that they haven't always managed. And the question is whether the comics get to lead occasionally, or whether they then become a satellite of whatever the screen needs next. And C.B. Cebulski stays as editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, which provides continuity on the editorial side. And David Abado comes in from the Disney Music Group as the general manager of comics and franchise. That's on the operational side. So the org chart is clean. I mean, Feige's still at the top. Winterbaum's running everything non-theatrical. Cebulski's running comics day to day.
Yeah, okay. And, classic Kevin Feige, his statement did thread the needle a little bit, because he specifically mentioned building out the next 90 years of Marvel's comic book legacy. Now, that's language obviously designed to reassure people comics aren't being deprioritized. So whether the structure actually supports that is something, we're going to learn over time. But we should note that this landed in the same week the fallout from Marvel's visual development layoffs were still being discussed. So the timing of a leadership announcement while that workforce conversation is still raw, it's not nothing.
No, not at all. But, in context, do remember that Josh D'Amaro has recently become the new CEO of the Walt Disney Company, and we've seen similar, personnel changes in the upper, so it's the timing, if you take that into account, there's a secondary issue of there was changes on the Disney side, and, this might be a good time to do this on Marvel. So, fans and industry observers aren't wrong to have noticed that, this layoff and the visual development and this management happened at the same time, but isn't necessarily, we should be careful reading the tea leaves here. That Marvel's next 90 years, it starts with the new organizational chart, which, is probably how most eras begin. Not with a bang, but with a memo.
Well, Marvel's had a very interesting history since they were Timely Comics. So in the big scheme, in the big picture, it's not that new. But okay, so speaking of more Marvel, let's keep going.
Well, okay. We've been watching the Punisher situation build for a while now, and we talked about One Last Kill back on episode 15 when it was just a teaser. So now it's out, Dan, and how did it land for you?
Well, Jim, I have to say it delivered completely. What it got me is what it chose, almost not to do. Marvel's conditioned us to expect every project to be some sort of connective tissue for three other things. They've got the post-credit teases and the cameos that exist purely to set up the next show. And I'm not saying it's wrong. Sometimes they're a lot of fun. But One Last Kill just tells it's a Punisher story, and it gets out clean. I've been a fan of the Marvel specials as a format. And I have to say, this is, I thought, one of the best arguments for why that format even works.
Oh, and the numbers, of course, back this up. Across every live-action Punisher property, going all the way back to '89, the Dolph Lundgren movie, and then the 2004 version, Warzone, both Netflix seasons, One Last Kill is now the highest rated of them all. 77% on the tomato meter, 87% audience score, and Berthal co-wrote the thing. This wasn't Marvel handing him a script. This was him. He was the executive producer, he was the co-writer, and the star.
Yeah, and I think that matters because the Frank Castle that we get here is different than the Frank we've had before. Mostly because his vendetta, spoiler, is complete. His family has been avenged. And the question it earns the right to ask now is, who is Frank Castle when the thing that defined him for a decade is done? And the answer is, well, he doesn't hang it up. He expands. The war on crime gets bigger because the personal score is settled. And it does set up what we will be coming to soon, a brand new day without making One Last Kill feel like a 2-hour commercial for that movie.
And that balance is something that Marvel genuinely struggled to find. And the skull vest moment at the very end, it carries a lot of weight for anyone who's followed this character across 3 shows and 2 production eras. And Berthal also did an interview with Esquire this week where he was asked flat out if he'd come back for more. And his answer was yes, but with one condition.
Yeah, that's right. His exact words. I'm really down to keep doing more, but I think I have to be the one that's making it. And that tracks completely with how One Last Kill came together. And it's consistent because back in 2021, he said he'd only return if he could do it right. The Netflix show left him with unfinished creative business, and that was his way of resetting that. He also talked about the creative intent. He wanted to explore what happens when you've dedicated your entire life to something and suddenly there's nothing left to do. Called it, and I'm paraphrasing, a super dark psychological place, which, and that absolutely comes through.
Oh, yeah. And Marvel, to their credit, was clearly willing to meet him where he is. Now, the R-rated door is open now in a way that it wasn't a few years ago. I mean, think about it. Deadpool and Wolverine proved that audience exists. And if Berthal wants to keep making Frank Castle stories on his own terms, the conditions are probably better right now than they've ever been. One caveat people are talking about on social media, some CG and spots raised eyebrows, worth acknowledging.
It's fair, and they they responded to it very quickly to share that no, this was a real shot. We actually shot it. Here's wires. Here's rigs. Here's John Berthal hanging off a roof. But it kind of went away pretty quickly. But it feels like a footnote against everything else the special delivered. When the character work is that strong, you can forgive a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I will say this much, that if Disney Plus and Marvel Television want to revisit, The Punisher: One Last Kill. And forgive me, given the tone of this, I'm not. I may sound like I'm facetious, but this is my own personal curiosity, Dan. I would love a count in the corner when it's now, 6:47? Is that when it all starts to go down? I just want to know how many people he actually took out, because that was the thing. Mm-hmm. It just got, the fight choreography just kept building and building and building, and the kills were so spectacular and so gruesome. Mm-hmm. It just sort of like, all I want is a number, and in fact, to be honest, I'll take it if, even if there's a Marvelous Disney listener out there with a clicker, all right, who just, sat by and kept count.
Well, guess what, Jim? I found a video from the channel New Rockstars, and host Eric Voss did just this thing, and the answer is 100.
100?
100. On the nose. Any like there was a couple ones where it's like, okay, well, Frank didn't kill that person, so we're not going to count that person. So he was pretty prescriptive in what actually was or wasn't a kill. So there was like a death, but it wasn't his. And yes, the answer was 100.
Wow. I did.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That now there are secondary questions. Was that deliberate? I mean, it was just, the notion of, how many are we going to do in this thing? 100. No, there's no way. It's like, no.
It seems awfully perfect.
Wow.
So I haven't heard them, and I would like for that to come up again and say, hey, did you really mean to hit 100 exactly? Because it sure. I mean, that's just almost too perfect.
That is. Oh, I love this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well. So, I mean, now moving on from when that arrived, let's talk about things that are arriving where they're supposed to, something we alluded to before long ago, and that was Vision Quest, which finally has a date.
Yes. October 14th on Disney Plus. Now, so we're still thinking strategic placement, right? I mean, we got Spider-Man Brand New Day in theaters July 31st. Mm-hmm. Vision Quest is now October. Doomsday in December. Help me out here. That's a deliberate narrative runway, right?
I mean, it's a fairly sizable production that's had a lot of eyes on it. I think it's going to be more of a. I feel like it's going to be a big actor piece for Paul Bettany and James Spader, including James Spader in human form, and a lot of the other characters. So I feel like you don't put something like that's getting some more and more attention as people hear more about it. Mm-hmm. You don't take something that's sizable. I mean, let's say it's only 4 episodes, but I believe it's more than that. But let's say even if it were only 4, you don't put something that, essentially a movie length or longer in between two big productions and not have it connect somehow.
Oh, yeah. Now, speaking of connection, I mean, we should probably pivot back for a second, at least to WandaVision, because that effectively launched the entire Disney Plus Marvel era back in 2021. I mean, Agatha all along, followed in 2024, and now Vision Quest completes, well, I guess we have to argue a trilogy around the Maximoff family.
Exactly. And like I said, with James Spader back, and considering his character that he played, and in the context of when he played the character of Ultron, Tony Stark said the words, I want to build a suit of armor around the world, which I think obviously is where Doctor Doom and that whole thing is going to come in. I think that's going to come in. The whole new mask, same task thing, I think that was the task, was the suit of armor around the world. But that's just me. But I think that's the thing. But, given where we are right now, in the moment where AI is just part of every single conversation about creativity and labor and the future of the industry, I mean, it feels in a way, almost like accidental, how timely all of this will be when it comes out.
Almost.
Well, okay. All right, here's a quick one. I just want to throw something out at you that I found on Hasbro Pulse website of all places. Now, I don't know if you saw this. I spotted this, because I get the Hasbro Pulse emails, because every now and then they're like, oh, look what's coming out, and I'm a sucker. And this was the product description for the Marvel Legends Brand New Day Hulk figure, and it says this: Spider-Man is surprised to see the Hulk again after so much time and has no idea if Hulk will remember him. Now, I read that and I was just like, what? Because it raises questions. No Way Home reset Peter's identity and everyone's memories. So I assumed that included Dr. Banner, Bruce Banner. But if Bruce doesn't remember Spider-Man, would the Hulk? Are these two sets of memories separate?
Wow, that's a fascinating wrinkle. I mean, remember, in the Spider-Man Brand New Day trailer that's out, we literally have a moment where Bruce Banner goes, "Are you one of my students?" He doesn't recognize Peter Parker, but that's fascinating. If the Hulk has been tucked away this whole time while Banner's effectively the smart Hulk, yeah, that's an interesting question. That's a fun road to go down story-wise with this next film. But what do we think's going on here? Is this a copywriter for the toy box that didn't think all that hard about continuity, or is Marvel doing something deliberately here, seeding something early on?
Well, I mean, I just can't believe that something like that is accidental. I mean, we know toys have spoiled things before, and I didn't even catch this as a spoiler, but I don't know. So either way, it just makes me feel that Brand New Days is going to reestablish a lot of relationships that, maybe we thought we understood and maybe differently.
Okay. Oh, one more thing worth noting about this week in Marvel and Star Wars. In fact, because and this is kind of a twofer, because this is Marvel Comics that published this, the brand new paperback anthology of Dr. Afara. We have Chaos Agent, which is, I guess, a collection of the past 6 issues of this character. And Dan, are you familiar with the Dr. Afara character? Or?
I am. I know the character, and she is fantastic on paper. For anybody who's wondering, you take a rogue archaeologist who's morally flexible, who operates in the Star Wars universe with just this wonderfully chaotic bit or sense of energy. And what really kind of surprises me is that this is a character that hasn't crossed over yet, either into animation or live action or anywhere. Jim, how does a character that good just stay in the comics at this point?
That is the exact same question I have. She is a rogue's rogue. And more to the point, Dr. Afara would drop into a Lucas animation show beautifully, or live action if the right project came along. And look, I'm not... The most recent paperback, the one that came out on Tuesday, Chaos Agent, it's not the strongest entry point for new readers, but it is a reminder that the Star Wars comics are developing characters that the screen side hasn't touched yet, and Afara genuinely feels overdue to make that crossover to show up in either an animated or a film. Yeah,
I mean, this is I describe her as a character as sort of like Indiana Jones with a little bit of Belloc thrown in there. Yeah, but it's a close. I mean, honestly, this is the equivalent of the sort of the Indiana Jones escapades in the Star Wars universe. So somebody needs to put her on a list, and they've got to figure this out eventually.
Absolutely. And but again, we love our comic book characters, and the street level corner of the MCU these past few weeks. Lots of comic book characters have delivered in a big way. Daredevil is delivered in a big way. Punisher, Vision, we know Vision Quest has a date. And Spider-Man's about to walk into a New York that's a lot more complicated than the one he left.
Yeah, and Frank Castle's probably already anointed him for something. But, what they say, I get to say it, we'll get back to that because we have this.
Some things are impossible to miss, like an elephant in the room, or a bull in a china shop, or this season's amazing offers, brought to you by PayPal. Discover offers from hundreds of brands like Viator, Allbirds, and Tory Burch right in the PayPal app. Save an offer before you check out with PayPal and earn unlimited rewards. Download the PayPal app to get started. Terms and exclusions apply. See paypal.com/rewards terms.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
And we're back. Okay. So, forgive me, folks, we actually have to now talk about the elephant in the room. Or, more accurately, the elephant that just keeps not showing up.
Okay. For all of you wondering if you're heading to see Mandalorian, still no trailer.
Still no trailer. And it's now confirmed. Was not attached to Mandalorian and Grogu, which, again, was our last real near-term hope. So now what? Reading the pop culture tea leaves, all signs now point to San Diego Comic-Con, July, Hall H, and then what? Then attached to Spider-Man Brand New Day, which arrives tail end of the, July 31st. So, okay. That would be smart placement. And think about it. The 4 trailers that we have so far for Avengers Doomsday combined over 1 billion views. So when the full trailer lands, the infrastructure for, an enormous response is already in place.
Yeah, maybe they're just getting some more servers. I mean, we literally ended last episode saying still no trailer. Yeah. So either we're very good at the show or Marvel is very committed to making us look prophetic. But I will say the Russos said something interesting this week. Joe Russo described Doomsday as a complete reinvention and that audiences are not expecting what happens, not just the plot, but the tone, the subject matter, all of it.
Which is either the most confident thing a director has said about a Marvel film in years, or the most carefully managed expectation setting we've ever seen. Possibly both. I mean, Anthony Russo's framing around Steve Rogers is worth noting. I mean, he's talked about how the Civil War dynamic, that fundamental disagreement about who gets to make the call, never really got resolved. I mean, Doomsday supposedly continues that tension, except now Downey is on the other side as Dr. Doom instead of as Tony Stark. I mean, same faces, but completely different moral equation.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then Ivan Musbackrack revealed something else, is that the script he read didn't even have a finished third act. Now, you can read that a couple of different ways, but, Marvel has apparently kept the ending locked even from the cast. So, when you're protecting a secret that hard, I don't know. We got to have an ending that is worth it. But in the interim, while we wait, their post-Doomsday plans are already shifting. The assumption was the Mutants era would kick off with Black Panther 3 in February 2028. And now that date has quietly disappeared from the release calendar. And there is a report suggesting Deadpool 4 may actually open the Mutants era instead. Now, we've got Sean Levy returning. We got Ryan Reynolds confirmed he's working on a new or on a fourth film. And the speculation is it involves Wade Wilson and the new younger X-Men cast before they get their own film.
And, well, look, Deadpool and Wolverine made $1.3 billion at the box office. So leading with your most commercially reliable mutant property, while a new X-Men movie cast finds its footing, that's not a bad call. I mean, you warm the audience up and you buy the new team some runway. And Lee Sung-jin, who's writing the X-Men reboot alongside Joanna Kalalo, said something encouraging this week, that character-first storytelling, soapy inter-team dynamics, getting back to why people loved these characters before they became a franchise. And it's hard to argue that's not the right instinct.
No pressure, Russo brothers.
All right, long story short, the mutant era is coming. The trailer is coming. Steve Rogers and Dr. Doom are on a collision course nobody sees coming. And in the meantime, we wait, as is tradition.
And as is tradition, we'll be right back.
Wishing you could be there live for the big game, soaking up the atmosphere of the crowd. But too often, life gets busy, or the price holds you back. Priceline is here to help you make it happen. With millions of deals on flights, hotels, and rental cars, you can go see the game live. Don't just dream about the trip, book it with Priceline. Download the Priceline app or visit Priceline.com. Actual prices may vary. Limited time offer.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
And we're back. Okay, Dan, I want to circle back to something from the top of the show. You took the whole family to see The Mandalorian and Grogu this past weekend. And there's something that makes this week particularly interesting from a parks perspective, right?
That's right. And that's what I wanted to come back to because, Smuggler's Run ride at both Disneyland and Disney World got a complete overhaul. Same day as the movie, and obviously that timing is not a coincidence.
No, it is not. And Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run is now fully themed to The Mandalorian and Grogu. And I want to talk about this because the original Smuggler's Run was always a ride that was fun, but never quite lived up to what it could have been. I mean, and don't get me wrong, when you entered the Millennium Falcon and you were in that space, that was so cool. But the solo theming, if we're all being honest here, felt disconnected from what most fans actually cared about. And Imagineering has wanted to fix that for a while. Now, this new version, and by the way, Drew Taylor, my co-host on Fine Tuning, was at the media event at Disneyland this past week, got to ride all three different ride profiles. And
Drew.
Yeah. And it talked about it's a genuine upgrade. I mean, some of the basic structure is still in place, pilots, gunners, engineers, but the mission is completely new. You're working alongside now Mando and Grogu, but you're helping Hondo track 3 different bounties.
Yeah. Yeah, now see, and here's what I love, and I expect so will the single writers, is that the engineers now hold all the power. Because, before it's like the further back you sat, I mean, I love it. It's an incredible experience. But the further back you sat in the cockpit, the less you really get to do. Now, every ride, they start with a Tatooine sequence. Hey, original trilogy, and things happen that I don't want to spoil, but the engineer gets 5 seconds to choose the next destination, and those are Cloud City, Endor, or Coruscant. So every ride is actually different. The Coruscant run is apparently the showstopper, where, I remember that when they were chasing Zam Wessel from Attack of the Clones.
Yep.
And also, you got Grogu chiming in the whole time, so who's not going to love that?
Well, as I understand it, the locations were chosen very deliberately. Coruscant happens because Favreau pushed hard for it personally. Endor, on the other hand, because of the Mandalorian timeline, the Death Star wreckage, it's right there. It's recent history, not ancient mythology. And I also, worth noting, the new Razor Crest appears in the ride, so it places this adventure after the events of the film. So Imagineering's being very precise about continuity. And again, early verdict from writers, including Mr. Taylor. And look, it's not quite Rise of the Resistance, but what is? But that said, it's a night and day improvement over the original Smuggler's Run. That Galaxy's Edge just needed a mission that fans cared about emotionally, and Mando and Grogu are that mission.
Yeah, I mean, Galaxy's Edge is definitely evolving. This comes along with adding more characters from the original trilogy, which, does present a strange time narrative. But, Jim, I was thinking about this. This is the thing. As much as I loved keeping everything in universe on a fixed timeline, it was either too big of a reach or maybe too small of a box. I loved the ambient sounds and that sort of worldly vibe that you got when you were walking through. But I can't deny that hearing selections from John Williams scores, I mean, that's a pulse point that spans decades and connects with everyone equally. And you know what? Hey, there's a lot of princesses in Fantasyland, and there's not that big of a stink on how they all connect in the same timeline.
By the way, that plugs in exactly with the argument that was used in-house, at Imagineering when it came to stepping out of setting all of Black Spire Outpost in the Disney-produced trilogy. Ultimately, again, the fans weren't terribly enthusiastic about that, and then that ultimately came the argument. It's like, look, people don't get upset that, Peter Pan lives across the street from Pinocchio. I don't think they're going to be upset if Darth Vader shows up in the same space as Rey.
Right.
But anyway, one more Star Wars related note. So, and it's somewhat disappointing to me. Ahsoka Season 2 has now been pushed back to early 2027? Really?
Yeah, this one snuck out there. Pushing Ahsoka to 2027, it means no new live-action Star Wars series this year. So, and Mando and Grogu, they will come home to Disney+. I think we talked about this late September, early October. So it's not like the streamer's going dark on Star Wars entirely. Just 7 years of that pipeline, it's running and still delivering. It's just in a different way.
Yeah, and and by the way, Disney is going to treat the streaming debut of Mandalorian and Grogu this fall as a very big deal. I mean, remember, The Mandalorian started off life at Disney Plus back in November of 2019. So when this film comes home to that streaming service later this year, it really is a homecoming. In fact, there's talk of characters from the films showing up in the parks around this time, at least on a short-term basis, and how would you do a Rhoda the Hutt walk around? But again, I want to stress here that largely depends on how well this movie does at the box office.
Well, I noticed some characters from the parks walking around in the movie because they had the BD droids tagging along like little ducklings behind R5. So. Good call, Disney. But we should also talk about, this is what we were talking about early on, as the box office reality, because the headlines are getting a little noisy this weekend. We had Saturday morning, the film opening to a franchise low on Friday, and then they said lower than Solo domestically, and then there was all these apocalyptic takes online. But you got a bigger picture here, right?
Well, but what was fascinating was, and again, there's an old cliche that, journalism is the first draft of history. So, again, you're not wrong. They had the look, it's lower than Solo and yada, yada, yada. But the original projections for the film for the entire Memorial Day weekend domestically were 90 million. By Saturday, the trades had to, walk a different story out. It's like, well, it's stronger on Saturday than initially anticipated. So maybe we're looking at 94, 98. And then, literally, just before Dan and I sat down to record this week's Marvelous Disney, the Hollywood Reporter had to come out and say, well, okay, new numbers. Looks like $102 million for the entire Memorial Day weekend. That's what the North American box office projections are. Which gets interesting, Dan, because, the whole point of, what was going on is like, well, Mandalorian and Grogu is going to make less than, Solo, a Star Wars story, did 7 years ago. But here's the thing. Solo, a Star Wars story, over the Memorial Day weekend in 2019 made $103 million. So if Mando, Grogu are making 102, it's hard to keep the narrative of this is a disappointment going. It's like, that's kind of the equivalent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, still worth noting, look, Hollywood math here, and what's the number that's been quoted for production costs? It's 150, 175, something like that, right?
Yeah.
And coupled with a considerable amount of money being spent on promoting this film, not precluding, all of us who are going because we went to Burger King. But this film will still need to make 500, 600 million worldwide to before it turns a profit, right? It comes into the black. So, that's still a ways away, folks. And again, that's just to break even, not turn a profit. But, at this point, given the trend, and I want to say the other number that's out there, overseas box office, the revised number was 165 worldwide for the opening weekend. And if that's the case, that puts them a quarter of the way from break even.
Yeah, and the word of mouth is a big part of this because that's what's swaying, I think, a lot of people. Is there's like, oh, okay, so it's fun, good. But I will say a Disney executive did make a point worth noting is that the impact on Disney Plus is something they're treating as critically important. And it's not just, when the film eventually lands on the service, which will be big. But right now, because seasons 1 through 3 of The Mandalorian have already seen a viewership bump. And the entire Star Wars catalog is actually getting a lift. And so that's a meaningful piece of this financial equation that box office numbers really don't totally capture.
All true, all true, and let's also not forget that families, particularly for movies, are notoriously hard to track in advance. And the Memorial Day walk-up business from parents with kids is exactly the kind of thing that moves the needle over Saturday and Sunday. So, long story short, story not over yet.
Exactly. And there's more because looking at what's ahead, you've got the licensing show, which was in Las Vegas the past week. Disney's doing a lot of talking about Starfighter. That's the Ryan Gosling film. And the message that seems to be pushed is essentially Mando and Grogu get Star Wars back in theaters after, this 7-year absence and reestablishes the brand. But Starfighter, with an actual movie star carrying a genuine summer blockbuster, is really the one that's going to relaunch Star Wars as a film franchise.
And by the way, the folks at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center, that's where the licensing show was held this year, the folks at Disney were busy effectively patting themselves on the back for the brilliance of casting Ryan Gosling in a Star Wars movie right after he was in Project Hail Mary, the top-grossing sci-fi film in years. And so you'll love this, Dan. They were walking around talking to potential licensees about, I know it's called Star Wars, Starfighter, but it really should be called Star Wars Top Gun. That's how well we're going to do next summer. And again, that's an interesting thing to say out loud at a licensing show. Well, Mando and Grogu is literally opening in theaters. But again, the logic does make sense. I mean, face it. Disney is playing a longer game here, and they want licensees to be excited about next summer. Now, Dave Filoni addressed the broader future this week in classic Filoni fashion when he said he's planning and architecting an overarching vision. Things are already in motion, but again, specific details, essentially none. He said nothing and meant everything.
Well, that's just the point of his dialect. That's what that's how he speaks. We don't really know right now if there's even going to be a season 4 of The Mandalorian. But I will say, I think the commitment to changing Smuggler's Run over to feature Mando and Grogu, it has to suggest that there's a strong chance. But that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. And face it, he's got Grogu on his side, so I think he'll be fine. All right, with that trip to a galaxy far, far away, I think it's time we close up shop here. So, Dan, where can the nice folks find you?
You can find me, the Hububbery, that's HUBBUBBERY on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and all that other stuff. We've just knocked out a bunch of episodes that'll be coming up soon. We've got Big Trouble in Little China, Logan's Run, and for the next big movie release, Masters of the Universe, but the one with Dolph Lundgren.
Oh, those sound great. Can't wait. Now me, social media-wise, I'm on X. Instagram is Jim Hill Media. And then over on Facebook is Jim Hill Media News. And by the way, we do have some other podcasts here you might want to check out on Jim Hill Media, folks. We got Disney Dish with Len Testo. We got Fine Tuning. That's the show I do with Drew Taylor, who's over on the Wrap and does spectacular work covering the entertainment industry. We also have the Epic Universal podcast I do with Eric Hersey. He's the producer of a lot of the shows here. Also have I Want That Too. That's our Disney merch podcast with Lauren Hersey, who just spent the weekend at a pop-up Disney store in Pittsburgh where, crazy lines to get into that thing. And then, of course, there's the Case 4 with Chris Cox. That's our brand new podcast that Len Test and I do. And as always, a huge thank to Eric Hersey and David Gray for the great job they do editing and then the physical production of this podcast. One quick favor to ask, folks: if you are enjoying Marvel, Us, Disney, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a rating and review. It genuinely helps folks find the show. And beyond that, on behalf of Dan Graney, who does a spectacular job writing this podcast, just want to thank Dan and tell you, that we will be back in 2 weeks' time. So till then, take care.